Welcome to Focus Today, and I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Of course, we are watching with great interest all the things happening in the Middle East, literally around the world. There's the president's heading towards NATO. You got the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. But the Middle East has been dominating things, and since over the weekend, it's pretty amazing that just most of the, if not all, of the nuclear capabilities of Iran have been destroyed. Well, I'm always honored and a joy to have with us Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She's the founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. She's been a hawk when it comes to things concerning Israel. And she has a great website, very resourceful, pjtn.org is the website. And that's Pacific Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, pjtn.org. Laurie, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing well, Perry. It's great to be back on with you.
Thank you. Good to see you. So much to talk about, so little time. Well, what's your 30,000-foot view over the last 2 days?
Oh, my gosh. Well, obviously, this is a miraculous thing that happened. Thank God that President Trump was in office, that he's the president, the commander-in-chief under these circumstances. But it's a miracle. It's Gog and Magog. You know me, Perry. I'm going to look at everything that happens in the Middle East and in Israel specifically from a biblical lens. And to see, you know, because God said in Ezekiel 38, he's going to put a hook in the jaw of Gog and Magog and drag them down into a battle because of what they have done to Israel and to our Jewish brethren. So it's a miraculous time. It was a huge victory for Israel. It's a huge victory for President Trump. And despite the little skirmishes going on this morning, we're living to be part of this amazing time in history. And I count it an honor that God would bring us into this place for such a time as this, especially to stand with Israel.
Okay. In the meantime, there was a ceasefire. Israel says Iran violated it. They responded, the president saying to both of them, knock it off.
Yeah.
And I get that. But where do you think this is heading?
Well, the prime minister, I have a statement from the prime minister's office, and the prime minister, there's a lot of misinformation that's out there right now. And I'm sure that President, once he gets done with NATO, he's going to get all the facts of what's going on and who did what. But the prime minister's office put out a statement stating that the ceasefire was set for 7 a.m. this morning. And at 3 a.m., Israel forcefully attacked in the heart of Tehran, struck regime targets, and eliminated hundreds of Baas and Iranian security forces. It was shortly before the ceasefire was due to take effect, Iran launched a barrage of missiles, one of which took the lives of 4 citizens in Beersheba. So that's just a tip of the iceberg. I don't want to go into the whole, but I wanted everybody to hear what is actually going on, because all of the naysayers, the other half of the MAGA movement, who is against defending Israel, against supporting Israel, against what Trump did in trying to bring this to a conclusion, it's going to be difficult because we saw with Hamas, we saw with the Houthis, we've seen with Hezbollah that even though a ceasefire goes into effect, it's never respected. They always counter. It's always tit for tat. And President Trump has right to be upset about what's going on. So God willing, this is all going to get sorted out. The question is going to be, can we really trust and rely on Iran to keep their end of the bargain? They've made it very clear. They chant death to America, death to Israel. So we know what they want, what their ultimate goal is. And when you're talking about a regime that teaches that to its citizens, that communicates that rant, you know, as often as they possibly can, to threaten us. You know, how do you trust these people? How do you negotiate with these people? So President Trump needs our prayers. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a huge challenge for him to navigate through this landmine.
Okay, so the overall goal, from what we know, was to denuke Iran. That seems to be accomplished or pretty close to being accomplished, and to free the people, to create an environment by which there could be a revolution to take Iran back. Do you think inevitably that would include a regime change?
I absolutely do. And Perry, we've seen this through the years. We've gotten little bits, snippets and pieces of video messages from Iranians. When Israel is at war with the Middle East, these people are able to get their voices out and heard, asking Israel to finish the job. Going into this war with Trump, we were seeing the same communications coming out. So these people, the Iranians, want peace. They want to go back to living in their Western, using Western values as they did before under the Shah. So, I heard over the weekend that the Iranian leadership went on a rampage, slaughtering hundreds of people that they accuse of being involved, being spies for Israel. So these people are sacrificing so much just to achieve their freedom. And I think Israel, we saw with the bombing of that, the prison where they hold all of these dissidents, which is a horrible, horrible prison, the things they've done to people, the torture that they've done to people in that building. And to see Israel blow the doors off of that prison so that the people could get out and help to launch this revolution. It's just an amazing thing to see. This is the same people, Perry, that we hear the world say, Israel is killing Christians in Gaza. We saw that with Tucker Carlson communicating that Israel was intentionally killing Christians in Gaza, as Israel has been trying to fight this war with Hamas, which we know is not true. But what is the MO of the terrorists? It's killing innocent men, women, and children, killing even their own. So we hope and we pray for these people to be able to achieve their freedom.
You mentioned earlier, Laurie, that the MAGA movement seems to be divided over this, and many of them want us to deal more in isolationism. In other words, just for America, stay out of these wars. Don't get involved in anything that could result in a long-term war. And I was surprised to see those who are opposing the president on this particular movement as de-nuking Iran. I mean, I'm trying to figure out in my mind who and why would somebody on the MAGA side be against this?
Well, we have a history of anti-Semitism within the conservative movement. And even within the Christian world, for 2,000 years, we've seen Jew hatred rise up. Why would they do this, Perry?
Yeah.
You would think that, these are the descendants of the God of Abraham. And if God made a covenant with these people that was everlasting, and if you look at Isaiah 11, and to me, Isaiah 11 says it all, where in verse 11, Ephraim and Judah would unite together in the last days against the enemies coming against Israel from the west, Hamas, and the east, Iran. Now we know who it is. And to see us both come together like this is just amazing. It's biblically the most profound thing. And I have been saying for the longest time, we cannot turn our back on Israel. I understand not getting into these long wars. I'm against going into Ukraine and into Russia. We shouldn't be involved in that. This is something they should have worked out themselves. We could help with, diplomatic relations, but not putting our people on the ground, not using our resources to supply this war. But when it comes to Israel, there's one nation we can't turn our back on, because we are told through the prophets over and over, judgment will come. The book of Obadiah is very clear that God said in the last days he was going to wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob was held in captivity and they did nothing. These people on the other side of the MAGA movement are not biblically oriented. They may say they're Christians and they may go to church on Sunday, but they don't read the prophets. They don't read the scriptures. We will be judged if we stand by while we watch Iran attack our friend and our ally, our brethren in the faith. There will be judgment to pay.
Oh, wow, that's good stuff. I got some more questions, but let me ask you one quick one before I take a break. This particular attack on Iran, as we know, you had Hamas, you had Hezbollah, you got Houthis, you've got Syria over here, which is kind of going crazy. You got all this together coming after Israel, and it looks like Israel, for the most part, has neutralized those influences. Mm-hmm. And then after Saturday night taking out the nuclear capability of Iran, someone said that all of this seems to be a plan to neutralize the military capability of Iran before a regime change, because if it's after a regime change, then whoever would follow the Ayatollah would have something to work with. In the meantime, if Ayatollah is taken out, who's ever left has nothing to work with. Is that plausible?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is what the other half of the MAGA movement is missing. If we don't remove their ability to create a nuclear weapon to take out Israel. Remember, we just saw people, since this happened, we just saw leaders of other countries who have said that they're going to loan their nuclear weapons to Iran. This is crazy. These people, we have to remember, this is an Islamic war. We are fighting against Islam. And they're not going to just walk away and sign a peace treaty and get along with everybody. What happened with Saudi Arabia is absolutely amazing. The UAE, it's fantastic. But we're talking about Shia Muslims, and we have to understand that Shia Muslims hate Jews and they hate Christians. And they have made it very clear. I was watching a video of a guy in Dearborn, Michigan. This is here in the United States of America yesterday. And he was saying that because of what happened, the Muslims are going to rise up in America and we are going to kill you all. He's talking to us. So if these people on the MAGA side think that if we just, do like Neville Chamberlain did and just, try to remove ourselves and think that we're going to be able to get through this peacefully, this is not going to be peaceful existence. This is the fulfillment of prophecy. And Ezekiel 38:39 is so relevant today, right now. We can try and do what we're trying to do, and the world is watching, and the world is actually seeing who these Islamists really are. They're not going to stop. Hamas is not going to stop. Hezbollah is not going to stop. They're going to ramp up their efforts after this. They have been embarrassed before the world because the United States, in collaboration with our brother Judah, Israel, took down the weapon systems, the nuclear systems in Iran. And that doesn't look well for them. They look weak, and that's the last thing Islamic countries want to appear.
Do you think Iran, it's not that they care about this, but did they kind of lay the groundwork for suicide, so to speak, when they attacked Qatar? Now, they attacked our base at Qatar, but they attacked Qatar, and Qatar has condemned it forcefully. So you got Iran attacking their own. Isn't that interesting?
Well, truth be told, it looked like a soft white glove. Got to do our part to make it look like we're, on the side of the West, right, and we're on Trump's side. We're with Israel. We're with the United States. Yeah. You can't trust Qatar. Qatar has kind of been noticeably silent, right, with all of this going on. But Qatar is at work. And Perry, Qatar is in my crosshairs. I have been working to expose them and their influence in education. Speaking of education and Iran, we're going to really see if these people are legit. And this is what I say when I meet with congressmen. How do we know that we can really trust these people and rely on these people? We'll know because they'll start teaching their children to love their neighbor. They'll teach their kids the golden rule. If they don't, and we don't see a change in the curriculum and the textbooks in their countries, I think that speaks loudly to all of us. When they start changing the content and they stop teaching their kids to hate America and hate Israel, to stop teaching their kids to shout death to America, death to Israel, then I'll believe them. Until then, not so much.
So do you think that President Trump's visit to Qatar when he was in the Middle East, didn't go to Israel, but he did all the nations over there, was deliberate in the sense that this attack was coming and it kind of just neutralized him for a little bit?
I think it was part of his strategy. And personally, I think it was a brilliant strategy. At the time, I was a bit concerned. Why isn't he stopping in Israel? What does this look like? Optics is everything in the Middle East. And the optics of him flying over Israel to go to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the UAE, and then flying home over those same countries and not landing in Israel just to stop in and say, hello, baby, you're Betty. I think it was part of his plan to keep everybody in the dark. It was a brilliant strategy, executed flawlessly. So proud and excited about the victory and our soldiers and the Israeli, the IDF, collaborating, working together. In fact, I have a friend who used to fly B-2 bombers, and I texted her the other day and asked her what she thought about the Operation Midnight Hammer. And she responded back and said, go big or don't go at all.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
All right, let me take a quick break. Always a delight to have with us Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She is the president and founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and you can tell she's right on top of it. pjtn.org is the website. Very resourceful. And let me encourage you to go there and support her. pjtn.org. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Always a delight to have with us Laurie Cardoza-Moore, the founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, one of the great organizations out there. Not to mention her other passion is textbook integrity and curriculum. We'll talk about that a little bit. She does have a website, pjtn.org, and there's a picture of the landing page. Laurie, just one other quick thing about all this. There's been a lot of talk, but nothing has happened about the potential of terrorist cells within the United States, especially with the border toboggle through the Biden administration. If there's anything that would trigger that, you would think this past weekend would have been it. What's your take?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. So, like I mentioned in the earlier portion of this interview, we have Islamist Muslims who are in our country who are now feeling emboldened to publicly say they're coming after us. And we think that the war is going to remain over there in the Middle East. No, we've known for a long time. We've seen there was an incident where an Iranian tried to, or actually killed another official in Washington, D.C. several years ago. So we know that they're here. We know that they're operating. They're waiting to get the cue. I think we're getting closer and closer. It's critically important that we let our congressmen and our senators know we want this issue dealt with, and we want it dealt with immediately because our national security interests are at risk now. We have allowed these people in. Again, I'm concerned about our relationship with Qatar because I know Qatar has been involved in indoctrinating our children, K through 12 and higher ed campuses. We see how Qatar is paying and funding for the violent rallies and attacks of Jewish students on college campuses. We've seen the content in Pearson textbooks that Qatar is funding. That's the other thing with Qatar. I want to know, is Qatar changing the curriculum in their nation's schools? What are they teaching their kids about America? What are they teaching their kids about Israel? Because we know what they're teaching our kids, to hate America, to hate Israel. That's why we have our kids that are in K through 12 grades that are marching in the streets with these terrorist groups, or these people who are supporting Hamas, these terrorist groups on our campuses. It's very frightening. We've got to start speaking up. And one of the things which leads into the whole education initiative, One of the things is the education reform that we have recommended to President Trump. And we need President Trump. I'm asking repeatedly. I know he's got his hands full, but this is critically important. If we want to salvage our country, the future of our republic, so that our children will have a place, a country to grow up in that will be free, and share the liberties that we have grown up sharing. If we're going to do this, we have got to call for an emergency review of civics, social studies, history standards that are being taught across the country. We need to encourage, President Trump can encourage the departments of education in all the states to adopt the Florida's Department of Education's standards when it comes to civics, social studies, and history. We don't have to get into all the other subject matter, but our kids should be learning civics every year in order to undo the damage that's been done over the last 2 decades, really almost 3 decades of what we've been teaching our children. We have to reverse course, and we've got to start teaching our kids why America is great, why our relationship with Israel is unique, being a Judeo-Christian nation. So I'm telling you, this is going to be one of the most important issues that we have, that we're going to be confronting in the weeks and the months and the years to come. While we've got Trump in office, we need to work while we can.
How did the public school curriculum get infiltrated from a foreign country?
Well, it really started back in 1974, back with the oil embargo. You remember with the Saudis. It started back then. In order to get the oil turned back on, we agreed, because the Saudis wanted access to our children. So we agreed as a country, okay, we'll let you have our university. Well, they gave Berkeley to the Saudis, and that's where it started. It's been growing ever since. So as this has mushroomed, and we're teaching the future educators this propaganda about America and about Israel, we see the impact of that on our children. And of course, notably is what has been happening on the college campuses in our country, in K through 12 education, teachers, Jewish teachers, being locked in the closet in their classroom because they were fearful of their K through 12. This was high school kids getting hold of her, knowing she was Jewish. This type of activity that's been going on has been because we have been directly educating them. And Qatar, it used to be back in 2012 when we started doing the research on the infiltration of Islamists into K through 12 education, into our textbooks. Pearson Publishers is the biggest. They are the delivery platform for all this hatred and this propaganda. But we've been, since 2012, we found a quote in a Pearson published textbook that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies and army actions. When I found that, I took the book and went cover to cover. Not only was there anti-Israel, anti-Semitic content, but there was anti-American, anti the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. That's why the United States and Israel are so uniquely intertwined, because we stand on those biblical truths. We share those biblical truths. It goes back to 1974. But if you look at, George Washington is rolling in his grave watching what's happened to this country, because we've seen anti-Semitism expand in this country. And not just in the public school setting, but even within Christian churches, we see a growing movement of Christians who are starting to recite the blood libels, much like Candace Owens. She accuses the Jews of killing Christian kids to take their blood. This is a blood libel that goes back to medieval times, and she's talking about it as if it were happening today. Very frightening to see that this is happening. But Washington, after the revolution was fought, the Jewish community at the Toro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, wrote a letter to Washington and said, how are we going to fare with this newfound country, these newfound colonies following this revolution? And George Washington went to them and quoted from the book of Micah and told them that they're basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can look it up yourself, that that Judah, or that their days of wandering were over, and that they would sit under their own vine and their own fig tree, and they would know peace. George Washington knew the history of Jews, that Jews, when revolutions had been fought throughout Europe, Jews had to pack up their families and go to another location to be safe. Washington was communicating to them, those days are done. You will find peace in this country. That's the foundation of our country. And so that history needs to be taught to our children.
Beautiful. One other quick question, Laurie, before I run out of time. As you know, the president and his administration working for the dismantling of the Department of Education, and I'm sure you have some comments on that, but that would push all of this back to the 50 states. And to your point, that means that parents have to be the hawk on curriculum research at the state level. Or am I missing something here?
No, Perry, we've been so lazy. We've been derelict in our duties. We have not obeyed the commands of the Lord. The Lord told us to teach these things, teach the Torah, teach the Bible to our children and our children's children throughout their generations. Well, in the early years of this country, we used to. It was families teaching families. Every once in a while, you would have a one teacher classroom where they would teach our kids, but the Bible was always central to being taught. We look at governors or superintendents of the state schools in Oklahoma who has brought the Bible back into the classroom, teaching the Bible as a history book. The Bible is it is the most important textbook, the most important book our children can have in their classrooms to learn and understand why America is great. We have to teach our kids that history, and it's because of our biblical position. It's why we left England, why we didn't want to worship under the King James. We wanted to worship God in spirit and in truth according to his word. And so those things have to be taught back to our children. And yes, President Trump, again, with all of the things he has on his plate, this is the most important thing. He needs to tell the states to bring civics back into the classrooms in each of the states every year to reinforce our values. We also need to make sure that our kids are learning about the unique role that Israel has played, that Jews have played. We also need to teach them about the role that Islam has played, because the Barbary pirates, our kids need to understand that we went to war with Islam because they were taking captive our merchant marines, our merchant vessels, and holding them captive. We need to teach them about the importance that Jews have played in our nation's founding as well to combat the anti-Semitism.
Wonderful. Good to see you. Thank you for your time. You're so inspiring. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, pjtn.org is the website. There's a picture of the landing page. Very resourceful. Check out all of our resources there and support her, PJTN. Laurie, you're a delight. Thank you, my friend. Stay in the fight. We need you.
Amen. You too, Perry. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thanks.